Hey guys, what's going on? It's Eli, back with another review video, and of course, continuing on, reviewing Halloweenish films on the weekdays. So that's right. As was teased in the first/last review video, yes, right after Dracula came out, well, that same year, we would get another, fantastic Universal monster film, and that, of course, being, from 1931, Frankenstein. Yes, 1931's Frankenstein. I'm glad to have finally seen this. I have seen other, other film variations of the same name and such, and this does count, Frankenweenie, because, yeah. But as of now, I've finally gotten to watch the one and only that everybody consider, the best movie variation of the book and such, and keep in mind, because, the original books / the novels of these classic Universal monster films, very different. They're very different from the books and such. But, of course they would have to, adapt some stuff, from the books / novels, and with the characters and stuff like that. And that also goes for the fairy tales that Disney has done, Hollywoodizing it, but at the same time, they turn out to be so fantastic and memorable and classic films. You get my point. I know my friend Tiki from So You Want to Be an Imagineer established this very clearly about the classic Universal monster films and the Disney fairy tales in comparison, but yeah. Again, I'm glad to have finally have seen 1931's Frankenstein. Of course, it did not disappoint for me, but God, I was not really expecting, this went by quick, because I watched this late in the evening, and it just went by quick. This being 1 hour and 10 minutes, jeez. But even though it's a very short movie, it does not disappoint at being a memorable and classic film. Really, it doesn't. Just keep in mind how movies were filmed all those years ago, and, the classic Universal monster films, okay? So, yeah, how movies were done at that specific time, so, yeah. But, just overall, because with what Universal's Frankenstein movie from 1931 had to offer, with a good story, with its cast of characters, and whom plays the monster on screen, and with the chilling and intenseful stuff, everything about 1931's Frankenstein is no disappointment, and, that goes for me. It did not disappoint for me. Yeah, it's fantastic. It really is. Okay, so, as always, read the description / the story. This iconic horror film follows the obsessed scientist Dr. Henry Frankenstein as he attempts to create life by assembling a creature from body parts of the deceased. Aided by his loyal, misshapen assistant, Fritz, Frankenstein succeeds in animating his monster, but it escapes into the countryside and begins to wreak havoc. Frankenstein searches for the elusive being and eventually must confront his tormented creation. Okay, so, before getting into the film itself, a little bit of background, because, as I sometimes do, of course. Well, it was after the success of Dracula that, the people at Universal, and, well, obviously, Carl, how you pronounce his last name, was wondering what else could they adapt and so on, and thus, they went with, Frankenstein. So, the beginnings and the development of, their Frankenstein movie, it did not start off with whom would direct this and whom would play the monster. Bela Lugosi was the first choice to play the monster, and Bela did test out for Frankenstein, and apparently because, the the test footage and I think, like, photos and such of Lugosi as the monster were apparently lost at some point, and eventually Bella dropped out, and yeah, he didn't go on to play the monster in Frankenstein. Although, fast forward years later, he would wound up actually playing Frankenstein's monster in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, if anybody knows about that one. Even Tim Burton's Ed Wood did a mentioning of Bela Lugosi and Frankenstein and such. Yeah, that was a nice nod. So then eventually, the movie would get its director, which being James Whale, and whom would play the monster, that of course being the late legendary other horror icon next to Bella, Boris Karloff. Yes, Boris Karloff. So he was chosen to play the monster, and for the rest of the cast, well, yeah, because a few cast members from Dracula that would be in this, from Van Helsing to Renfield, they would play two characters in this right after being in Dracula, and also Henry Frankenstein. Even I was kind of wondering, like, why is he named Henry Frankenstein? We have a character named Victor, but why is it not Victor Frankenstein? Well, apparently, because I did my research, and if any of you know this, apparently the name Victor was, at the time, very strange, but that's just how it was at that time. Apparently, they felt that Victor was an unfriendly name, and, with severe audience. It sounds weird, but, bear with what happened at that time, and, I think the name Henry Frankenstein was okay. And hey, we still got the name Victor in this movie, so that's good to see. Okay, so now getting into the film itself. Also, I'd like to quickly point out, like with Dracula, and that goes for, some other classic Universal monster films, no music. Just keep that in mind. With the classic Universal monster movies, not all of them, especially in the early 1930s, did they have music. They would only have music for the opening credits. And in this case, yeah, for Frankenstein, it does. But also it has a little bit of finale music, when the movie ends. But, until we get to that. The opening to Young... I said Young Frank... I just about said Young Frankenstein. Yeah. Don't want to get my Frankenstein movies mixed up. But anyways, so the opening to the 1931 Frankenstein film, very interesting. I was not aware of this, that there is an opening where some guy in a tuxedo coming out, through the curtains and giving us an introduction and giving us a heads up about this movie that we're about to watch. And also with the mentioning of, Carl, again, how you pronounce his last name, one of the founders of Universal Pictures, and the guy in the tuxedo, and actually, because I wouldn't know if I would see him credited, especially uncredited, but I don't think he's, no, because I don't think he is in the uncredited cast. I mean, that's weird, but anyways. But yeah, just overall, a guy in a tuxedo, giving us an introduction, warning us and giving us the heads up on what to expect and the elements and details in Frankenstein, and yeah. So, with the opening credits, and it's very clever, because what Frankenstein did with whom plays the monster, a question mark. It's a mystery. We don't know who the monster is, and his name is revealed when the credits show at the end of the movie. Yeah, so the name is revealed, and, well, we all know, of course, and as I just named him, so yeah. Okay, so with the opening to this film after the introduction and the credits, and just with one piece of music for the opening credits, a funeral happening, and then hiding, by a hill and such is, of course, two of the main characters, Henry Frankenstein, being played by the late Colin Clive, I'm pretty sure I'm saying his last name right, and Fritz, played by the late Dwight Fry, whom previously was Renfield in Dracula. So yeah, so this time he plays Fritz, the Igor of this movie. Yeah, I wonder if the same goes for the name Igor, if they felt that it would be frightening for the character to be named Igor or something. You know, again, similar to what I just explained about why, you know, Henry Frankenstein is named Henry instead of Victor, okay? Probably most likely, but anyways. So after a funeral happens, Henry and Fritz, they start digging up a body, basically kind of like grave robbing and such, but for an understandable reason, and even like they collect another body that's been hung on a cross and such, and Fritz having to climb up the cross and, you know, cut the rope and such, and you just wonder, like, what is going on? Like, what are they doing with these dead bodies? And even one moment where we see Fritz sneaking in a university that Henry was a part of, but he left. You know, he was a medic student and such, and one of the top, you know, doctors and such, a part of the university, and teaching future medical students and such, that being, Dr. Waldman, being played by the late Edward Van Sloan, who previously was Van Helsing in Dracula. And I'm pretty sure, yeah, because they are the only, Edward Van Sloan and Dwight Frye, they're the only two Dracula cast members to be in this. And, you know, seeing as how Bela Lugosi would have been in Frankenstein playing the monster, we would have had 3, but it's just now down to 2. And you know what? Both Edward and Dwight, they're good at this. The different roles that they play in each classic Universal monster film. Yeah, so Dr. Waldman teaching medical students, and, well, when class is dismissed, and, well, Dr. Waldman pointed out 2 brains in 2 jars, one that's smart and normal, one that's not normal and is, yeah. And Fritz, obviously, was going to go after the smart brain, the normal one, but first being startled by a skeleton, and then when a gong happens, I assume that's supposed to be the school bell, when that goes off, that startles Fritz, and he accidentally drops the brain in a jar, the normal brain, and thus he then goes for the, you know, messed up brain that's not normal. Yeah, best way to describe it. But of course, if you know, you know, and if you know Frankenstein, and with the whole thing of what brain that they use, and just how, like, say, young Frankenstein, as I almost accidentally mentioned, it does the same thing. So yeah, going for the wrong brain. They were supposed to go for the normal smart brain, but they wound up with a dumb one and not so intelligent brain, yada yada. Anyways, so also, aside from what's going on with Henry Frankenstein and Fritz, we then come to Frankenstein's fiance, soon-to-be wife, and that, of course, being Elizabeth, being played by the late Mae Clarke. She is soon to be married to her beloved fiance, Henry, but right now Henry is too busy and focusing on his work. He needs to do that first before he is soon to be married to the love of his life. And even at one point, because Elizabeth had received a telegram/message from her soon-to-be husband about what's going on with him, and she's concerned for him, and one of the other main characters that we get, named Victor Moritz, if I'm saying his last name right, being played by the late John Bowles, if I am pronouncing his name right or wrong. Again, you know me sometimes. So Victor also being concerned for Henry, and thinking that he's, they think, especially Victor, that Henry might be a bit crazy with what's going on with him and such, but until they arrive at the castle that Henry's at and what they see and witness, there's even like a little bit of a flirting between Victor and Elizabeth, mainly Victor and such. But of course, you know, with Elizabeth, you know, with how much she loves Henry, yeah, so, And even at one point, because they pay a visit to Dr. Waldman, you know, talking about Henry and, you know, because they're concerned for him, and Dr. Waldman giving them information about, you know, why he left the university, because yeah, Elizabeth and Victor are well aware that Henry at one point left the university, and that's because, well, a bit of a disagreement with dead bodies and such, and how the university was doing that, and how Henry envisioned, you know, doing this whole thing of bodies and such with, you know, electrobiology and stuff like that. And yeah, so basically all three of them, and Elizabeth doesn't care because, you know, she's even told that, you know, probably not a good idea to do so, but she doesn't care. She insists, all three of them traveling to where Henry is currently at, along with Fritz, and, well, because at the castle, we see that Henry and Fritz, they're preparing something. They're setting up some equipment and so on, and, well, because we see that a body is on this table, and, well, because Henry, he has created something by his own hands. He did this with his own bare hands, as he says to Elizabeth, Victor, and Dr. Waldman, when at one point they do arrive at the castle, and by this point, there's a severe thunderstorm with lightning and rain, and fun fact, 1931's Frankenstein is the first time ever that a movie in general uses the classic thunder sounds. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So again, by arriving at the castle, and Henry at one point has Fritz, you know, to go see who's at the door, and Henry, because he doesn't want anybody coming inside and being around him with what he's doing, and, well, you know, because when Fritz will not open the door for them, and when they're shouting for Henry by calling his name, he can see that, well, it's his fiancée, Victor, and Dr. Waldman, and thus he lets them in, and he allows them to see what exactly he's doing. And Henry, confronting Dr. Waldman about, well, with what happened and why he left the university, and also with a mentioning of the violet ray, ultraviolet ray, and proving Dr. Waldman that he was wrong, and by what Henry is doing of, you know, dead bodies and bringing them back to life, and addressing Dr. Waldman that what he has made with his own bare hands is a body that has never lived. He has put body pieces together and such, and by, you know, inserting the brain and the head, just, yeah. And thus, well, lowering the table up to the rooftop and outside, you know, because with the thunder and lightning, and, you know, providing the electricity to bring Henry Frankenstein's creation to life, and with how intense the lightning and thunder is getting, and yeah. And when the table lowers down, well, it takes about a couple of seconds until we see a bit of twitching from the hand. And, well, Henry can see that his creation has come to life, and that iconic quote/line, "It's alive, it's alive, it's alive, it's alive, it's alive!" Yeah, he has succeeded. Henry Frankenstein has succeeded on bringing a dead body to life, and as he described to Dr. Waldman, a body that has never lived, and just, yeah, he has succeeded. A mad genius, basically. And after that, well, because we then see Henry's father, Baron Frankenstein, being played by the late Frederick Kerr, if I'm saying his last name right, Kerr, probably, but anyways. His father is a bit upset, and, you know, because wondering why the wedding has not happened. And, well, he thinks at first that it's another woman, but no, and, well, because Elizabeth and Victor are addressing to Henry's father, and Elizabeth would have said something, of course. Even the Burgermaster, being played by the late Lionel Belmore, showing up, and this having to do with the wedding and such, and Baron being upset and addressing to the Burgermaster about the wedding, like, there will be no wedding, and so on, and it just gets out of hand, you know, the tensions between Baron and the Burgermaster. You know, that name kind of sounds similar, and how, if, like, saying it fast, Burgermeister, Meisterburger. Hey, maybe that's where the Santa Claus got that name from. Like, you know, a parody of Burgermaster, but changing it a little to Burgermeister. Probably, but I mean, who knows? And if you know. Okay, but anyways, continuing on, because what happens next is, well, Henry and Dr. Waldman having a conversation, and especially on the creature that Henry had just created and brought to life, and yeah, just, I mean, Dr. Waldman warning and just, you know, setting Henry straight about this creature and the possibilities and risks and such, and also, Dr. Waldman is well aware of the brain that he and Fritz stole from the university and from his you know, class and such, and, you know, telling and giving Henry the heads up that the brain that they stole and implanted inside of the head of the monster that Henry brought to life is the one that's not smart and such. It's a horrible brain and stuff like that. Abnormal brain and so on, and you know, Henry's comments and, you know, just, and, you know, it's just a dead tissue and stuff like that, and, you know, explaining to Dr. Waldman that the brain will process and so on, but Dr. Waldman, you know, being very smart, but, you know, I mean, how's Henry supposed to know on what was going to happen next? And, you know, just, you know, Dr. Waldman just warning Henry that the monster should be locked up, you know, at all costs and stuff like that. But also, at one point, the monster does arrive in the room that they're in, and they close the windows because of the light and such. And, well, this is where we get our first appearance of the monster, being played by Boris Karloff, as I mentioned before. And, you know, because even though this movie is not that long, and how far we get, and when we see the monster moving and such, yeah, but, you know, thankfully, Boris Karloff would get to play Frankenstein's monster in a couple of other movies after this. So we would get more of Karloff, aside from this, you know? Get to see more of Karloff in action as the iconic monster and such, with that iconic look and makeup, yeah. So, and by the way, because, as I recall doing some research, the way that they do Frankenstein's monster in this, again, completely different. Like, everything in the movie, the total opposite of what was from the original book/novel. How they did Frankenstein's monster in this, and which would, of course, become the iconic look of Frankenstein's monster, something to do with Gollum or something. If you know about this, and no, not to be confused with, say, Gollum from Lord of the Rings, okay? A different Gollum, so, yeah. Just because, you know, just basically for the look and design, that's all. So, and if you know this, but of course, you know, I still wanted to mention it, you know, more fun facts and such, but anyways, so, yeah, so again, Frankenstein's monster approaching, and his entrance is him walking backwards, but then when he turns around, and the camera up close at his face, yeah, and, Henry trying to teach the monster, telling him to sit down, and so on, but all hell breaks loose when Fritz steps in with a torch of fire, and it triggers the monster, and yeah, all chaos unleashes, and them trying to calm the monster down, but, you know, they're really having trouble trying to calm this monster down, and Fritz is not helping. He's not helping at all, because At one point when they put the monster in a dungeon, Fritz is still there. Even when Henry told Fritz to leave the monster alone, Fritz still torments the monster and trying to calm him down, but how he's doing it is not working, by whipping at the monster and stuff like that, until Fritz took it too far and caused the monster to attack him. And a little later on, Henry and Dr. Waldman can hear the horrific screams of Fritz. They go and see, and they can see inside of the dungeon where the monster is. The monster killed Fritz, hanging him. Jeez. Yeah, because you can immediately see that how Fritz sadly met his demise by being freaking hung. And Henry and Dr. Waldman being the only two there and trying to calm the monster down and trying to close the door on him, not working at all. Like, the monster is too strong and just too rambunctious. And then at one point, I think they do succeed on closing the dungeon door, but in order to just calm this monster down and to just, they have to tranquilize him and such with a needle. So that's what they do. They set up a trap by luring the monster out, distracting the monster, and then, of course, when, tackling him, and then Dr. Waldman getting, behind the monster and injecting what was in that tranquilizer needle and such, and that conks him out. It takes about a couple of seconds, but then he collapses and passes out. Yeah. And after that chaos, Victor shows up, and he gives Henry the heads up that his soon-to-be wife, Elizabeth, and his father are coming to the castle to see him and such. But he doesn't want them being here, especially his father, because of what just happened. And thus they have to dispose of the monster's body, and Dr. Waldman addresses to Henry that he'll take it from here. He'll make sure that the monster is dead once and for all, because, Henry now sees and realizes that, this isn't what he expected, but because of what's been going on, they need to put the monster down. And even when Elizabeth and Baron, they did show up, Baron just not being impressed and complaining about how the castle looks where his son had been staying. And even at one point, Henry collapsed. He passed out, just not feeling well. And Elizabeth, attending to Henry. And again, Dr. Waldman, stating to Henry that he'll be the one to handle this and to dispose and to make sure that the monster is dead once and for all. And because when that happens, Dr. Waldman, we see Dr. Waldman proceeding to, and preparing to, kill and put down the monster, has the instruments out. But we do see at one point that the monster is starting to wake up, his eyes blinking and such, and should have seen it coming, because the monster attacks, strangles, and kills poor Dr. Waldman. So that's the end of of Dr. Waldman sadly meeting his demise. And after that, the monster, he then escapes from the castle, and thus he's free, roaming around, and just who knows where he's gonna end up, and what more bad things are gonna happen, And then we see later on that, Henry and Elizabeth, their wedding proceeds. It now happens. The wedding party is going on, and everything's going pretty well. And by this point, Henry, he's become a much better man, and now focused on marrying the love of his life and such. But yet, they are unaware that Dr. Waldman was killed, and the monster is now loose and roaming around, and just, So everything's going pretty well at the wedding. And by the way, because the name of the village and the location of the movie Frankenstein, the location in the movie Frankenstein and such, Bavarian Alps Village. I'm pretty sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Yeah, so that's one of the locations of this movie, because there's that and the castle and the university. So yeah. So at one point we do see, because the next time we see the monster, Henry Frankenstein's creation, well, because we see that this little girl named Little Maria, and she's playing, and well, because her father's there doing some work outside of the house, and well, she is gonna go play by the lake and such, and well, just, you know, her father giving her the heads up, just, you know, to be careful and so on, and yeah, and the actor who played the father, because pretty sure because he would be uncredited unless, you know, just being credited as the father of Little Maria, but it doesn't. I don't know, because it doesn't. Yeah, because one of them's uncredited. I'll put his name in the text and such. But yeah, the actor who played the father of Little Maria. So when Little Maria goes to the lake, well, that's where she encounters the monster, and you know, she's not scared or anything. She then interacts with the monster and asks if if he wants to play with her and so on. You know, will you play with me? And showing the monster, you know, by throwing flowers into the lake, and you know, they can float, and you know, like a boat and such. And the monster does so, and he's having a good time. Both of them are having a good time. But then, then out of nowhere, the monster decides to pick up Little Maria and toss her into the lake, like, what, because he thinks that she'll float too or something? No, actually. And she wasn't even that far from, you know, the surface, but she still, but sadly she drowns, and the monster just being, you know, shocked and such, and what just happened and what he did, and then he flees. And back at Henry and Elizabeth's wedding, that's still going on. Well, and to speed things up, because, yeah, Henry is informed by Victor that, unfortunately, Dr. Waldman was discovered and found. He had died, and, well, the monster, you know, because they figure out that the monster's somewhere and such, and, well, and they realize and they can hear that the monster is present somewhere in the building that they're in, and thus, you know, they try and find and search for the monster, and Henry trying to keep his soon-to-be wife safe in one room that they were in, locking the door, and thus she's just there by herself. But little does she and the others know that, well, the monster wound up being in the room that she's in, and thus, you know, he starts to terrify her. Thankfully, the monster didn't kill Elizabeth, so, you know, thankfully she's okay, and when they can hear her screaming, they come to her aid, and they can see what a mess of a room it is now, and Elizabeth just laying there on the bed, but again, she's okay, she didn't get killed or anything. And then, at one point, the father of Little Maria comes into town, completely just in the zone, just like the look on his face, just like not normal, and well, everybody at the wedding can see him carrying his daughter, and they're distraught by this. They're shocked at the sight, and they start following him, and they come to the burgomaster because of what happened, the death of Little Maria, and somehow, however they found out and such, it was the monster's doing, and thus the burgomaster plans for there to be 3 groups split up to find the creation of Henry Frankenstein's creation. And nice to see that they don't blame this on Henry Frankenstein, and well, the burgomaster has Henry Frankenstein being one of the leaders of the groups, you know, half going to the lake, half going to the mountains, and so on. And thus, the search party begins to track and find and hunt and to kill Henry Frankenstein's creation. And yeah, because, you know, with the chase happening, you know, them searching for the monster, and the monster very close to the villagers, you know, tracking and hunting him down, and when we get to the climax, yeah, let's go ahead and get to there, because, well, the climax happening at a windmill, and this being an iconic sequence here, because, you know, with the windmill and being burned and such, and how much the monster hates fire. Yeah, because they they locate and find the monster when, all of them make their way to the windmill, and at one point, Henry, coming face to face with his creation, the monster had Henry held hostage and such in the windmill, Henry trying to fight with the monster, and while the villagers outside of the window are chanting and just, yelling and such and towards the monster, and at one point the monster throws Henry off the windmill, and you can clearly see, and as of now, it's a dummy, and how the monster violently threw him off the windmill, like he hit one of the, spindles, and just, fell to the ground. But thankfully he did survive, but of course, clearly, because he was very wounded, and thus the villagers, they save and, take Henry back to the village and such, and, well, with the monster still being in the windmill, they burn the windmill. Yeah, burn the windmill! And just, burning certain places of it, and then, with the fire building up, the monster panicking and screaming. He's surrounded by flames, and at one point, part of the windmill inside up top collapsed on him, and thus he's stuck, he's paralyzed, and, well, the monster meets his demise with the windmill being burned. And the last scene of this movie, well, all ends well, and I'm pretty sure by this point, Henry and Elizabeth did get married, and a couple of maids that we saw at the wedding, because only one maid is uncredited, and that being, Cecilla Parker. The late Cecilla Parker played one of the maids, and for some of the other uncredited cast members, like there was the late Michael Mark as Ludwig, Robert Millash as a villager, Inez Palange as a villager, Paul Panzer as mourner at Graveside, if I'm even saying that right. And there's also Waldman's secretary being played by Cecil Reynolds, and medical student being played by Eleanor Vandeveer. I did pronounce that right. And a bunch of others, like, two little girls that were played by Carmencita Johnson and her sister, Cecil Ann Johnson. I hope I got the first name right. I don't know. But just overall, the maids, come to, offer and give Henry something, and that being his great-grandmother's wine. And Henry's father telling the maids that he won't be needing anything, and, well, he tastes the wine himself, and yeah. And then, the Universal logo shows it's a Universal picture, as it says, and yeah, the end. And the end credits with the cast, and where we see Boris Karloff's name appearing, and yeah, because we now know who played the monster. So, yeah, a great way to end 1931's Frankenstein for sure. Frankenstein from 1931. Just another fantastic, incredible, and perfect classic Universal monster film for sure. Yeah, everything about 1931's Frankenstein, just fantastic from beginning to end. The story was fantastic, the characters and the casting, the chilling moments, and some funny moments here and there. There were some. And, the look and appearance of the monster and being played by Boris Karloff, and and you know what? Boris Karloff wasn't the only fantastic actor in this. Everybody else was. They were all great. And yeah, just how this movie turned out, and just, very different from the original book/novel. But you know what? It did not disappoint. They managed to make this really good, and as long as, movies that are very different from the original books and novels, if they're done that, have to make sense and be good, yeah, Frankenstein did so, and that's great to see. And with the film's director, James Whale, what he brought to 1931's Frankenstein, just, yeah, everything about 1931's Frankenstein, just fantastic. And I'm giving Frankenstein from 1931, well, obviously, 10 out of 10 stars. Yes, 10 out of 10 stars for 1931's Frankenstein. Urgh. Okay, so what about you guys? What did you think of 1931's Frankenstein itself, is it one of your favorite classic Universal monster films? And is the monster one of your favorite, Universal monster characters? And, keep in mind, because he's not really called Frankenstein. He's called Frankenstein's monster, okay? But, nowadays, when people hear the word Frankenstein, they instantly think of the monster. And yeah, I mean, obviously, but still, just to verify and just keep in mind. Just overall, because is it one of your favorite classic Universal monster films? What were some of your favorite moments? What were some of your favorite lines? I think we all know, like, one great line that would be your favorite. So, and yeah, just overall, what do you think of 1931's Frankenstein itself? And with what I've had to say, my review, and yeah, what did you think of my review? Leave comments and give this review video a like, as always. And so, with all that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of 1931's Frankenstein. More review videos are coming your way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward, and I'll see you guys in the next video / review. And of course, continuing on, reviewing Halloweenish films on the weekdays. So, the next classic Universal monster film that I'll be reviewing, well, I don't know how to describe it with words, but on my shirt, can you tell? Like, this guy? Yeah, and because who I'm pointing out, that's on my shirt. Yeah, stay tuned for that. Take care, and peace out.